Now, let's talk about the boiling issue of illegal logging of Rosewood as we give it extra attention with a forum later this morning at the Labadi Beach Hotel. My guest joining me via Zoom for a conversation is Daryl Bosu, his Deputy Executive Director, Arocha Ghana. Also, Seidu Jeremiah is a member of the Rosewood Task Force Committee that was set up way back in 2019. And my colleague, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, has done a lot of stories related to this subject. Later on, Evans Mensah, who will be anchoring the Joy Forum at the Labadi Beach Hotel this morning, will also be joining us. So let me say good morning to you, gentlemen, joining me via Zoom, if you can hear me. Can you all say hello back? Daryl, I see you smiling. Joseph, you're not smiling.
Let me smile. Let me smile. Mama, a very good morning to you. Jeremiah, good to see you. Daryl, good morning to you as well. And as always, it's nice to be on your show, Mama.
Yeah, but you're taking over my job. You sound like the number 3, but I am the number 3. Well, it's good to have all of you as we discuss this very important subject. But Joseph, let me start with you because you've traveled to some of the most hit zones and you've told several stories. Let's have a brief of your discoveries.
So this is a conversation that at JoyNews we started back in 2018, early 2018. Because it had come to our attention that a ban that was actually first announced in 2012, that because of the near extinction of the rosewood species that we have in the country with the repeated logging of it, government had taken a decision to ban any further harvesting or export of it back in 2012. It was actually eventually firmed up in 2013 by Inusa Husseini when he was the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Subsequent to that, Neo Samuels came in as land minister. He renewed that ban. It didn't end there. Peter Mewu came in 2017, renewed the ban all the way up until Asomacheme. Despite all of that, we had gathered mainly from the northern belts, including areas like the Tumu Forest Reserve, that the rosewood trees were being harvested. And we were worried about this. The communities were complaining about how the felling was negatively impacting the environment, and to a very large extent, even situations of communities clashing over the illegal trade, that became a big matter. Not just that, they would move the trees through the farms of people and destroy them. And obviously, because this ban was internationally linked, it was affecting our image abroad as well. So we took interest, produced one of the very interesting documentaries, Killing Our Roses, on this, so to highlight this. We had the EIA, the Environmental Investigation Agency, follow up with its own investigation, and then eventually the committee was set up to look into it. But it's still sad that we still get reports, and there is even evidence to back it that despite all of this, the illegal trade continues to happen.
So let's bring Daryl in. Daryl, give us what the current situation is. We've heard about the bans. What is in place right now, and how does it look like?
Well, I think the latest development in respect of Rosewood was the letter that was circulated by the Ministry of Lands, still reiterating what Joseph has said, that the ban is still in place. And this was after news from EIA that Rosewood trade was still ongoing, even though in Ghana, there was no declaration of how much was being exported, but the Chinese do keep records, and their record shows that as at 2020 this year, they were still, 2021 this year, they were still receiving rosewood from Ghana. But if you go to the records of Ghana, you don't see anything, because as I'm sure Jeremiah will say, they send it outside described as something else. So you don't really get to know that it's rosewood that is living, but it's actually rosewood. And at the moment, so we are now working with the ban that was still, I would say, reiterated by the ministry, that is still in place. But as you all know, it is not effective. And if you go to Upper East and Upper West, rosewood harvesting is still going on. Communities are really up in arms against most of these merchants. And this is where the problem is. So I would say we are back where we started, where there's a ban, but it's ineffective, and things continue as usual.
Jeremiah, I remember some 2 years ago, there was a high-profile Chinese Rosewood merchant who was arrested. In fact, we called her the Queen of Rosewood. She was arrested, jam bail, rearrested, and she had transported, or she was in the process of transporting 2 trucks of the wood on a major highway. My point is that even though we put a ban, we have local authorities, we have security personnel, you have to transport all the way to Tema to ship it out. On the back of that arrest and the fact that other state officials were implicated, what came out of it? And whilst you try to address that, we will link it to the committee that you sat on. Hello, Jeremiah, can you hear me? Kindly unmute and speak to me, Jeremiah. Okay, I'm afraid we lost him there. Maybe I should go back to Joseph. Joseph, I was talking about this Rosewood Queen that we arrested, and her story sounds very similar to Ashawan. Just bring us an update, remind us of what had happened back then.
So it was a big issue, obviously coming on the back of the Ashawan issue, which had to do with illegal gold mining, illegal mining. To a certain extent, you know, these are traits that virtually follow along the same lines. The same Chinese folks are the ones involved in the illegal mining. The same Chinese folks are the ones involved in, to a certain extent, the illegal rosewood logging. This woman was arrested. The claim was that the police were going to do everything possible to bring justice to the residents in the areas where some of these illegal harvests happen. That never happened, like we've seen even with the illegal mining specifically. It was one of those very high-profile talks, and then nothing happened. It's actually not the first time that there's been arrest in connection with incidents like this, and nothing has happened. There's been several incidents of even Ghanaians being arrested for their role in some of this, and nothing eventually happens. And so sometimes the communities where some of these things are done, the chiefs then insist on what they call fines targeted at the people who are arrested with some of these illegal logs. And then eventually nothing happened. The claim is that politically connected people, high-profile people are the ones behind this. And in some of the communities in the Busa area where we were, the last time that we tried to dig a bit into this same complaint, in fact, I was on the ground just about, 6 or 7 months with a team from Arocha, Ghana, trying to get more details and more sense and administering a few questionnaires in the communities, trying to understand what exactly was happening. And the same complaints that we had heard back in 2018 when we were first on the ground were the same complaints that we're hearing, that when the communities find out some of these and draw the attention of the police, either the people get stopped, then they produce documents that claim that they have permit from the lands ministry to do this, then they let them go, and then nothing happens. And fatigue is setting in even at the level of the committees in terms of trying to bring the perpetrators to book and stopping some of these illegal activities.
And Darryl, I'll let you handle the issue of the impacts of overlogging and why we seem to have such a big issue with Rosewood. But Jeremiah, I understand, is back connecting with us on this conversation. So let me try and see if you can hear me this time around. And talk to me about the task force that you sat on. What was your work exactly?
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Seidu Jeremiah. I can hear you now.
Good. I sat on the committee that the minister put together in 2019 as a representative of the civil society organizations. But there's one thing that is not happening in this country in our rosewood and illegal activities. There is no honesty and trustworthiness in what we do. It is affecting everything. I was just listening to Darrell, and he was talking about how communities are complaining. They go to arrest people, and they show them documents from government. As at the time we were working on the committees to find out the illegalities, the involvement of government agencies, involvement of security agencies, involvement of government high-powered people, there were CITES documentations up to 2020, December 31st. I'm talking about 2019, August, September, October.
Yeah.
There were CITES documents that had covered beyond 2019, the whole of 2020, there were CITES documents. And somewhere in March 2020, I arrested a truck in Yizesi with fresh rosewood when they claimed they were collecting dry rosewood. And I spoke about it. And you'll be surprised names like Magdan were mentioned in connection with it, because the guy who was carrying it told me that at that time, it was only Magdan that had a permit to do all the rosewood in this country. The ban was still in force. Darrell just reminded us, government said that the ban is still in place even in 2021. How can you put a ban in 2019 on everything? Transactions, documentation, transportation, how did they call it? Logging. I forgot the time they said they used in Rosewood, but all these things you said they are in place and there are documentations.
Let's get a bit of clarity here. Was the ban also affecting those who already had permits?
That was what it was stated in our terms of reference. But we arrested people during the ban and they showed us those documentations. And for the Forestry Commission people at that time told us.
Hello, sir. Oh, I'm afraid we seem to have lost Mr. Seidu. Jeremiah.
So they said.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
we lost you briefly. Go ahead.
Yes, they give the documents, and the documents are not practically functioning. You go to the field, the people have the documents, you ask the government says the documents are not working. Meanwhile, the people are sending them out. All the rosewood that we impounded as a committee during that time, they've all left this country. 3 days ago, rosewood, I went to a plant, and they were doing rosewood, and they had the document, 2021, December. Where is the honesty and trustworthiness as a nation? And
so can we just go back a little bit? You said you impounded rosewood, but they are all out of the country. How does that happen?
Tackling the issue of rosewood. And we need to be asked in handling this case. We cannot say a ban and be issuing documentations that are legal for people to carry and deal with rosewood business. For me, I think...
I was asking a curious, case of you impounded and then they found their way out of the country. I was asking how.
Oh, one of the people told me that they gave them a fine. A 40-footer container, he paid 30,000. A 20-footer container, he paid 15,000. And he showed me receipts, which I took pictures of. And once he paid the fine, in ADB, he paid the fine, those containers left.
So what was the purpose of the committee? I mean, why the committee in the first place if the people would just simply receive a fine and then they are made to take the woods away?
I regretted for being a part of the committee because at that time the government wanted to use us to whitewash what was said. And I can tell you confidently that information that we got on the field was removed from the report. We were blocked from getting access to some information. We were not allowed into some other areas. And the committee itself didn't go to certain places. Whilst we were working as a committee, there was logging ongoing in the Upper West, and one of the hotspots, Olemoni area. But the committee didn't go there. So for me, the honesty and truthfulness of this story must start from government and traditional leadership. Because there's no honesty and truthfulness in the government, there's no honesty and truthfulness in the traditional leadership. This menace, we can do anything. I don't see a solution to it until our leaders tell us the truth and they are honest to us. You can't ban something. And as I speak to you,
okay, so we seem to be having disruptions in that connection, particularly to Mr. Seidu Jeremiah. Just a bit of background. Hello, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll come to you. I just wanted to establish the fact that this committee was set up after some government officials were implicated and, you know, in the whole controversy of missing Rosewoods. The ministerial investigative body on the EIA report submitted its findings. This was the task force that you sat on, Mr. Jeremiah, correct? Hello, Mr. Seidu Jeremiah?
Yes, please. That was the committee I sat on.
But I remember that the findings were not made public. If my memory serves me right, I'm not sure exactly what the ministry said afterwards. I'm hearing a lot of details from you today, but was there a public announcement of your findings?
There was, the ministry took advantage of the coronavirus. There was no public announcement. And by the time civil society put pressure on them, and some of us put pressure on them that if they don't tell the world, the nation what happened, we will release the draft reports that we had and give it to them. Then they came up and said that the committee didn't find any government institutions culpable about this. And you could find even fire service officers, fire service, police, custom officers, internal revenue. You know, everybody was involved. As for the forestry people, let's take it at that time, the forestry people, they were legally doing it. And if you went to their offices, I have conversations, I have videos, I have discussions with them, they will tell you, yes, once the paper is given, it is legal. All these government security agents, including BNI, they were involved. Because most of the Rosewood we arrested, I arrested as an individual, I arrested as a committee member. Some of them were being escorted from Hamile to Tema Port. And when we went to the Tema Port, there was no single report. There was no single document on Rosewood. All the Rosewood left this country as sawdust, charcoal, scrap, cashew, shea nut. You mention it.
Well, stay with me because you're part of this conversation. Darryl, I want us to go back to why Rosewood is such a big deal, and we're talking about overlogging, and we're even talking about a ban.
Yes, so Rosewood, as we all know, is a tree that is distributed across savanna regions of Ghana. And not only that, you also find it towards the Togo, the Voltarian side as well, all the way even as you move down to the transition area, Kintampo areas, you find some rosewood in these areas. And the reason why rosewood logging is really detrimental to the environment, first of all, is the fact that it's one of the few trees which is maintaining crown cover within the savanna area. And if you know the savanna area very well, it's almost shrubland now. You don't see very tall trees beyond 10 meters. The only few trees you see are rosewood, another one called Absilia, and then you are likely to come across some mahoganies and also some skybar, what we call the silk cotton tree. These trees are very crucial in maintaining the microclimates in what is left of the savanna region. So the deliberate salvaging, or as the government called it, where they were harvesting rosewood from the landscape across the region, was really detrimental in the fact that it was affecting the microclimate environment. It was also affecting the ability or the services that it was providing. One crucial thing, if we realized during the period of the intensive harvesting, was the fact that rosewood was a very key forage for a lot of pollinators in the savanna region. So you are looking at food security issues here. And you also find rosewood also lined up at most of the areas where you have rivers and streams. So for as long as they were continuing to harvest these trees, they were exposing the water bodies and all of that to evaporation and too much drying up. And if you observed also, there has been very recent issues where communities have complained about rainstorms and excessive winds, and all because these trees, which are serving as windbreaks, have been felled, and we don't have quite some replacement. So if you move beyond the Savannah region, all the way to the upper west region and go to the upper east, rosewood trees are really, really crucial. Because if you look at the tree height and the density and all of that, it's the only best wind breaks that you can find in these areas. It's also holding the soil together, and the forage, as it drops, serves as food for a lot of biodiversity that lives also in these regions. And now, one other thing why it's also very crucial, for as long as the merchants have seen that rosewood is a merchantable timber commodity, they will finish it and they will also jump onto another species. And this is actually the trend. And this was really also why we're worried. Once you start harvesting in the north, in the dry savanna regions, you come across and experience the density of the tree species that are there, and you want to harvest everything. So right from rosewood, they have also jumped onto other species like Absilia. They've jumped onto other species like Absilia they call pawpaw. So most of the pictures you are showing on the screen, you see with a ring, a white ring around the diameter, that is Absilia. Once they finish harvesting the rosewood, they've now jumped onto these other hard species, and it's not really ordering very well for the community's ability to build resilience in the face of climate change. And this is why rosewood harvesting, as was started in 2008 because of the Blue Hydro Dam, and its continuous harvesting has posed big challenges for us as people who are very interested in the health of the environment, as well as the health of the people living in some of these vulnerable areas.
And Joseph, it is indeed that there are people who are not doing their work, but there are other, persons who wish they could do their work. They're simply helpless because they don't have the right equipment. Tell us about, this aspects of your discovery in terms of those local authorities who simply looked on because they were helpless, they didn't have the right resources.
In fact, not just them, even officials of the Forestry Commission, although repeatedly they've been implicated to a certain extent in some of these investigations. When you're on the ground, the repeated complaint that you get is that they claim that they don't have educated personnel, they don't have educated equipment. The community say they impound some of these rosewoods, their traditional leaders step in, but eventually the powers that be don't then allow for things to happen. And Mamavi, earlier you were alluding to what exactly led to this particular investigative report that the Environmental Intelligence Agency did, which eventually then resulted in the setting up of the committee. I just pulled out that report just to read a bit of it for you. This is a report that was published in March 2019. The Environmental Intelligence Agency, which is one of the world-renowned environment groups, sent investigators to Ghana after JoyNews had done quite some expose on the issue of rosewood. And this is what they found. Undercover investigations by EIA reveal that powerful Chinese and Ghanaian traffickers are still harvesting and shipping rosewood out of the country through the help of the ruling party members and complicity at all government levels. The investigation revealed that New Patriotic Party members and their compatriots in government have established an institutionalized scheme fueled by bribes to mask the illegal harvest, transport, exports, and illegal licensing of the timber. And then the report goes on to say that NPP members and their cronies are using a number of tactics to get the illegal trade going, including fraudulent use of salvage permits, misdeclaration of timber species, use of escorts to deal with control points, forging of official documentations, and retrospective issuance of various permits. And then this other interesting aspect of the report as well, the EIA report again claimed that the investigators found that Mr. Nana Kofi Nsia-Edu, who was then the executive director of the Wildlife Division of the Forestry Commission, allegedly received percentages of the value of the rosewood exported illegally, and that he was allegedly being bribed to sign export permits illegally. And, the EIA guys then published a number of videos that they claim to back this particular allegation of theirs. So this was actually what eventually triggered the work of that committee as the minister set up in 2019. And then when the investigation was done, the officials of the Forestry Commission were cleared, and the committee's report, which was actually chaired by the now renominated Deputy Minister Designate for Lands and Natural Resources, Benito Usubio, then concluded that the claim that there was some political party involvement in all of this was actually not true. Well, we had all demanded evidence from the EIA that, particularly with the bit having to do with the political party folks, they should name names and show us all the evidence. But then, of course, they insist they used undercover investigators to get what they'd done. So then they couldn't have gone ahead to actually put out names. So that's the other bit of it. And just to again put it in context. So when the EIA study in particular made mention of how this illegal business had been ongoing even after the said ban, to put it in context in terms of the earnings. So according to the data that they've gathered, since 2019 March, when the latest ban was actually announced, more than 205 million kilograms of rosewood, equivalent to 128.2 million US dollars, have actually been exported from the country to China between March 2019 and now. That's what has happened. So it's big money that's actually going out there. It's a lot of dollars that are going into this space. People are probably making their cut from it, which is ending up fueling all of this and making the local community folks, those on the ground trying to help deal with this problem, somehow helpless in terms of bringing it under control.
And Ms. Saidu Jeremiah, you said earlier that, portions of the reports that you issued after your work was not included or were taken out. Can you still remember exactly the aspects that were taken out? Hello, Jeremiah? Do we have him, please? Kindly unmute so we can hear you, sir.
Okay. One of the aspects that were taken out of the report was the issue about we not finding any government official culpable. That was not true. We found a lot of forestry officers. We found a lot of government officers. I mentioned that we even found fire service officers, police officers. As I speak to you now, this morning I got home at 2:30 a.m. because I was tracking Rosewood and got my farm belt cut, and the track left me. A lot of people, I sat by a police barrier, and the police demanded a certain amount of money, and the driver had to pay. And when I checked that track, it had all the documentation that they needed to have from government, including a certificate of conveyance from forestry.
So we can't call them illegal then? We can't say they're doing an illegal act then?
No, they are not doing an illegal act. The people are not doing an illegal act. The Rosewood people have permits, they have all the documents, they have conveyance, and they carry them, when an ordinary person like me stops them, they just show me the documentations. And to my surprise, sometimes they show me documentations, including my own kingdom. The people I look up to, their receipts are given. So what do you do? That's why I said that we need to handle this matter with the most honesty and truthfulness we need in this country. Otherwise, this thing will not take us anywhere.
So it sounds like we have a ban, but there's no ban on the ground, really.
You see, the government puts a ban in place, then they deceive you that there's a ban. Then they do the rosewood more. During the ban, the rosewood that left this country was more than when even the system is opened. So for me, they should take off the ban. The ban is not in place. They do that, then everybody's mind is on the ban, and the thing is happening. Please, JoyNews, I said this morning, 2:30 a.m. Rosewood is happening this morning, 2:30 a.m.
Let me ask Daryl, and I'll bring Evans in. He's anchoring our Joy Forum later this morning at 10 at the Labadi Beach Hotel. But Daryl, What would be the consequences if we didn't have a ban at all? Tell us about what would be happening if we didn't have a ban?
Well, I think right from 2008 all the way to 2012, when before the first ban, we know what was happening. And I will say that we knew at that point that, wait, the government was legally giving out permit for people to harvest rosewood. And seeing how it got out of hand, they decided to bring the ban. If we go ahead and take off the ban, then we are somehow legitimizing an already illegal activity that is decimating our environment. So for me, I think we need to maintain the ban, and then all of us work together and make sure that we bring all of these people who are found culpable to book. And I want to say a little bit of something to what Joseph said about the issue of logistics with the Forestry Commission and staff. Yes, that challenge is there with every state institution you have in this country. But the issue of rosewood is a deep-seated, I would say, executive level negligence in ensuring compliance of the laws of the land. And that is what it is. Because right from the beginning, we recognize that, look, there was a development in 2008, Bui Hydro Dam. We need to remove merchantable trees from the development area. It was done through legal means. And then after, also the Fufusu Solar Road, about 127 kilometers, further permits were issued. Since then, the North had not been spared the ravages of rosewood logging. And that, for me, is a problem. So the government has used a legitimate action through salvage permitting to continue to perpetuate an illegality in the North. We should bear in mind that the northern region before this period had not been the center of excessive logging as we see it now. All because in policy, we recognize that it was a fragile landscape and there was no need to allow any sort of logging to continue in that area as has been. So it's a big problem. And I believe that we should still maintain the ban and make sure that the things that are responsible for people perpetuating this action are addressed. And like Jeremiah said, we need the government to be truthful and to act in good faith for the people who are found, who are more vulnerable and who are exposed to the vulnerabilities of these illegal actions going on in the environment.
Evans, good morning. This is certainly a big boiling issue, very much like the mining. There may be very big people involved. Tell us about our forum later this morning and who you are engaging.
So we're definitely bringing those who have been involved in the trade somewhat in terms of authorities dealing with it, but also those who have been working.
Hello, Evans.
Yes, sorry, I lost you briefly. I mean, bringing all the stakeholders together for a conversation today, obviously with the Ghana Legal Rosewood Trade sealing the leakages forum. In essence, we've been talking about this, and Joseph had led these investigations across the country trying to find out what the problem is. It is obvious on the back of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources investigation, they formed a committee under the former minister. They themselves found that although the ban was in place, the rosewood was still being harvested under the guise of the salvage permits. We are going to go back to that particular document because in that document there were recommendations made that had not been followed, and some of them will use the COVID-19 because this was in 2019. They use COVID-19 as an excuse, but it cannot be an excuse because the northern parts of the country has been devastated. You know how I love the outdoors. Reading that document, one of the things that struck me was a place like a Mole National Park. It's currently one of those areas that is being threatened because of the harvesting of rosewood. So we want to try and get to the bottom of it and see if we can hold the torchbearer, the duty bearers accountable, and so we can get some action and follow up, I guess, most importantly after the forum, how the commitment that have been made are going to be implemented.
Let me ask Jeremiah and Darrell, and then, of course, Joseph. What do you think we can do differently with this forum? We have a huge opportunity. We have, huge personalities showing up, policymakers. How can we turn this around, Jeremiah?
I think there is good news now. The good news is that the landowners have risen up in the Savannah region. What we need to do is to get Bono East, Northeast, Northern region, Upper West and Upper East for the landowners to rise up against the illegalities. The politicians in Savannah region have also risen up against it. So let's see if we can get the politicians from these other regions that I've mentioned to rise up against it. Once the landowners have risen up against it, the law in this country says that the landowner can throw away any document given by government forestry commission to work on a non-forest area. So once the people have the knowledge, once the people have the information, and once the people know that they are not benefiting from it, and the leadership, traditional and political, in the Savannah ecological area is rising up against it, for me, there's good hope. And there's a great leadership now in Forestry Commission. I have interacted with the new leadership, and they are more action-oriented than the previous one. So for me, there's hope, there's good hope. We just need to support and harness the support that we have gotten from the traditional and political leadership to act now instead of talking and the silence they kept before.
Okay. Darrell?
Yes, I see you have the medium and the platform to carry the information forward. Most of the time we have frontline environmental issues happening all around us, but we really lack the voice to get these challenges out there. And for me, I think that with this dialogue, the forum that we're going to organize, let's make sure it goes wide, it's a spread all over the country. Let's keep bringing back the issues to the screens. Let's keep bringing back the issues to the table for discussion until the agencies and the politicians who are supposed to make sure that the right thing is done, they get up and do their work as expected. I think this is one of the issues that also need fixing in this country.
And Joseph?
So, 2 quick points. First of all, usually when the conversation is happening, there is the reference to CITES permit, CITES permit. It's actually a convention, an international treaty that Ghana is a signatory to. And back in 2017, the said convention actually listed rosewood as an endangered species, which would mean that all over the world, it's all its different species, trade in them is supposed to be banned, and you would need a special permit before then you're able to trade in them. So the question about, so then why don't we just leave the ban? If we leave the ban, chances are that you can't do legal business with it because all over the world, all the species, there is that ban that on them. What can this forum do differently? I think Samuel Abu-Jinapor is the new Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. He's been in office for just a few months. We had the president take his presidency on the line when it comes to the illegal mining fight. We saw what it became. Mr. Jinapor says he's reactivating and renewing and re-energizing that fight against illegal mining. I think this is a good opportunity for him to pay attention to the rosewood space as well. A lot of it is happening in his own backyard in Damongo. Repeatedly, Jeremiah and his group have closed down and helped the former regional minister close down a rosewood processing factory in the Damongo area that keeps coming back into business. The minister needs to show us that he has the balls to get the work done and begin in his own backyard, Damongo, and deal with those involved in this illegal business there and then extend it to the rest of the countries. I think having such a forum, raising the issues, drawing his attention and that of this institution, then provides an opportunity for him to then jump into the fray and say, I'm probably ready to stick my ministerial position and even my position as MP on the line that I'm going to deal with this. Otherwise, then, maybe the guns need to be turned on him as well separately in terms of him standing in line of fire when the residents complain and demand action for an end to this illegal trade. So I expect him to take advantage of this opportunity that the EIA JoyNews are providing by bringing up this issue and making it a topical issue again. And he should run with it and clamp down on those involved and set examples of those who are still going ahead with this illegal business.
Thanks, Joseph. Finally, with you, Evans, you've mentioned those who will be there, the objective for this forum. But what's the plan? It starts at 10, ends at what time? And how can people get interactive? Can they still come to the venue?
I mean, this is strictly by invitation. It's a forum of in-person 60 people. But thankfully, we're going to be streaming live on all our social media platforms. It's going to be live on television and on radio. It starts at 10, and we expect this to run up until 12 p.m. So this is a 2-hour slot. And wherever you are, and this is not only a Ghanaian problem, it is an international problem. It is one of the problems that Ghana is almost exporting to the rest of the world. Because if you look at the countries that we export our illegally harvested rosewood to, it's across, really. And so wherever you are, you can participate. I mean, just get interactive with us on our many social media platforms and share your experiences. And we're going to ask the questions. And as Joseph said, we want to throw as much light on this as possible. Rosewood harvesting is happening. In last year, January, traveling to the north, I saw trucks load of rosewood on the highway, and this is not far away from police checkpoints. And so it's happening. And we hope that we can put some spotlights on this on all our platforms today. And by the end of it, people get uncomfortable when you throw the sunshine on something that you're doing illegally. And we want to do that, make them uncomfortable and push the political powers to act.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeremiah. Thanks to you, Daryl. Thanks, Joseph. And thanks, Evans. That conversation will be at the Labadi Beach Hotel, 10 a.m., strictly by invitation, just as Evans said. So if you don't have any invitation, don't worry. It will be live here on television, on radio, on myjoyonline.com. It will be live on YouTube and Facebook as well. And you can be following and also interacting with the panel later this morning. That's the end of this conversation. Watch out for the big one that comes up at 10 a.m. I've got some birthday dedications before I leave. So it's your birthday today. Derek Goza of MedLab is from your brother. He says, thanks for always having his back. A brother like you is a blessing for life. So enjoy your birthday today, Derek Goza. And also, it's your birthday, Poma. Oh, our own Poma. Poma is a text editor, and it's her birthday today. This is also to Mavis. And I'll come back to that. But here's also another one. Rebecca Intiamwa Boateng of Tema Community 11. It's your birthday today. It's from Fruit Ike Adi. Enjoy your birthday. If it's your day today, we wish you the very best. God's blessings and love it. Stay with us.